Welcome to this episode of the Strong and Kind podcast. This episode is with Charlie Merrill. Charlie is a physical therapist out of Colorado. I found Charlie on Instagram. I immediately was drawn into his page because he talks a lot about reconceptualizing your pain experience and leaning into the psychological aspects of pain alongside the physical aspects of pain. This was a really great conversation with Charlie. We got into a lot of really good topics. I picked his brain. He's a very good guest in that he picked my brain. It was fun to go back and forth with Charlie. Just a really good conversation that I hope you find meaningful and you find some meaning in. If you're struggling with pain and need to reconceptualize it, reach out to Charlie. I'll link his Instagram in the show notes. If you're struggling with pain and injury and you want to keep training for life, please reach out to me at dr.dave.strengthandkindness on Instagram. Love to talk to you, provide any insight I can. Thanks so much for being here. Peace. All right, I'm with Charlie Merrill. Did I get your name right?
You did. Thank you.
Perfect. Beautiful. All right. I always want to. I should have asked you before we were talking, but Charlie's page is something that this is the cool thing about Instagram. As many things about Instagram and social media are insane right anymore, but I stumbled upon Charlie, and I just vibe with a lot of the things he's saying. But I also want to ask him some good questions. So, Charlie, I guess a good starting point is, how long have you been a physio?
I started practicing in 2000, so that's 25 plus years. Yeah.
Okay. And you said you went to Colorado for undergrad, and you started in 92.
I went to Colorado for undergrad, and then I graduated from Regis University PT school in 1999 and started practicing, and I've been doing it ever since. And the stuff we're going to talk about today kind of hit me like a brick, like halfway through my career, and then just like reignited everything for me.
What? Because that's a really good segue into like, how did you begin practice? And then, is it the same as where you're at now? Or what has changed? You're like, tell me a little bit about like that arc, because
Sure.
I do have young physios that tune into this, and it I think to some extent you probably want some things to have stayed the same over the course of your career, but I also hope that there's change in positive ways, right?
Yeah, I think both things are true, I mean, I still use a lot of the stuff I learned in PT school on a day-to-day basis. And I like to say I kind of grew up in the heyday of manual therapy, which is one of the things that got me into this to begin with. So I came out of school like, I want to manipulate joints. And then when dry needling was legislated, I was like the first cohort of like dry needling, and I was just consuming all of the continuing education I could because I wanted to fix bodies with my hands. Right? That's what I wanted to do. And I had mentors that were doing that, and it was so inspiring and exciting. And so when I discovered about 10 years ago that I was missing something, I was really clear that I didn't want to just jettison and get rid of everything that I learned up till then. And I understand that there's resistance from our colleagues sometimes to going in this direction because of that fear. I even feel it on Instagram now that there's this sort of pushback. There's like people reeling back from this brainocentric idea that's permeated, right, our profession in the last 10 years. Because we want the body to still be important, and it is important, but it's really important in a really different way, I think, from how I learned it in school, and that's pushed me and forced me to really change the way I think and treat.
Yeah, and like, I love that because it does kind of, and I actually just talked to a few people yesterday about, when I first started to learn about pain science, neuroeducation, right? And then what I did is I immediately went and just started trying to explain pain away to people, right? Like, yeah, okay, if you understand that, like, right? And I think that's one of the things it's probably why, me and you are in this profession. At some level, we were attracted to a combination of helping people, being some sort of a teacher, and then also like kind of stroking our ego of like, yeah, I'm like gonna help people not feel pain, which is like, pain is like the most common human experience. It sucks and XYZ, right? But it also doesn't work to just try to explain somebody that like pain away, right? It maybe helps, like understanding these things. It's like anything else. One of my favorite analogies anyway with people is like, basically like, if you take a first grader on day 1 of first grade, like they don't know anything, right? Or they know very minimal. And it's like day 2, there's not that much change. But over the course of the whole school year, it's like, oh, that's a different kid, right? And so information is powerful, but then it's like the implementation of the information and the practice of things and that type of stuff is really what
I would
we're
say,
after, right?
like, knowing is not doing, right?
Yes.
That saying kind of resonates for people, and
Yes.
it's important, like knowing is a starting point. But what you said earlier, I think, is really important. Like, I came out of school thinking, I'm going to do this for people, right?
Yes.
This is, I'm the expert, I'm the one with the skills, they depend on me. And that was an ego thing early on. I quickly realized that that wasn't the way it was meant to work. And even the post that you referenced a minute ago is like, this is an inside job. We're meant to be doing this for ourselves, and we're guides and we're support system, but we're not doing it for people the way we used to think.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge shift, and it's almost like hard. That's like almost one of those first egotistical things that, and I like, let's be honest, we all have egos. It feels good to help people. I love helping people. I love seeing people achieve stuff. It's like great, but it's more of in service of them. That's in service of me, right? As opposed to like, I did it. And I still have seen and I've heard people with horror stories about like being fixed. PTs kind of continuing to use that narrative, right?
I mean,
you
it
mentioned
works often enough, right? Like it works
Yeah.
often enough that, and people actually want it. Like sometimes people come in being like, yeah, this is great. I just had a conversation with a clinician who works with a lot of software developers, and they have this mindset of like, it's code. We can just like go in there and we can change the code and then it's better. Like they can do that, but that doesn't work with the human nervous system in the same way as it does with computer software, even though you could argue it is kind of a software phenomenon, right?
Yeah. That is like I was thinking about this today. It's like, a lot of people are concerned like AI is going to replace me, AI like, or, like, and I'm like, you still have to be on the path. Like, I think really what I see in a lot of how I approach things is like, I'm just like kind of like 5 years ahead of somebody as far as like learning, education, and implementation. And even people are going and they're utilizing these things to learn more, but you can help them do, right? And I also just think like humans need humans. We need to just accept that we need humans, and right. And but I do want to go ahead.
You have kids, right?
I have one kid. Yeah.
You have one kid. So like I think about this. I have 3 kids. They're almost grown. But from a parenting perspective, like it's very similar. As a parent, my job is not to do things for them. It's not to snowplow things out of their way. They're meant to learn these things on their own with guardrails, with my support. But if I try to do it all for them, it doesn't work that well.
Yes.
So the same is true with patient care, right?
Yes, that's a beautiful analogy. And I mean, that's one of the joys of parenting so far is like trying to help a little kid who's 1 year old, like explore and play and, but also, keeping them safe and allowing them enough bandwidth to like, I mean, my kid fell down the stairs like at right around 1 year old, and it was mortifying. But you know what? He really quickly learned. Unfortunately, nothing was bad, but he quickly learned that he needed to change his strategy, right? And like, okay, and unfortunately, that's sometimes we take that too far, right? But
that's Superman. I can't
exactly right.
Dive off the top step, yeah.
All right, so I do want to touch on this because this was just a great post, and my own journey is reflective of it, and I think when you get people here, it does help. But it almost is like, well, like, are we motivators or are we leaders or whatever? But the best thing about the pain recovery process is that symptoms naturally resolve as a byproduct of us making the important changes in our lives that we are meant to make. If you think of pain as a compass designed to guide you in moving forward, more aligned with your values, it can feel much less threatening. So just talk to people a little bit about, the bridge between values and pain, right? Like it's one of those things, again, going back to like, if somebody came in on day 1 with like back pain that they maybe had for 8 years, And I immediately went into like value, commitment, and acceptance therapy. They'd be like, what the hell am I doing here, right? But I'm 100% with you. When I take action in alignment with my values, in alignment with who I want to be and my best self, I feel better. Does it make my pain maybe completely go away? No, but it definitely turns the volume down, right?
Yeah, I like to think of pain as a helpful message. I like to think of our nervous system as altruistic. Our mind and our body are altruistic in trying to guide us in our lives in the way we're meant to go. Some symptoms are more sacred than others. You know, from the PRT work, some symptoms are just stupid. They're just a brain habit, right? Mm-hmm. They're just, you've subconsciously rehearsed them enough and they become paired with things that there maybe isn't a lot to be learned. But I tend to bias more towards the like, there's something here for me. And this is how I think about my own pain in my body. And I know you talked recently on your Instagram, an Instagram reel about that you have pain all the time. That like pain is just a normal part of life. We're not trying to eliminate pain altogether, you know. But when I think of symptoms, I'll just say symptoms because this goes beyond pain. It goes to fatigue. It goes to other immune conditions, even as far as like long COVID and chronic fatigue and things. But this is our brain and nervous system trying to protect us. And if we can understand that, then it really changes how we approach the recovery process. After 8 years, after 8 years of suffering with something, it's really difficult because it's been generalized and it just seems to color everything.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult then to understand. And that's what we're here for, to help people listen deeply, because this is a language, right? Physical sensations in our body are a language, like Greek. I had a client the other day who was like, I feel like I'm going into a classroom and everybody's speaking Greek and I can't understand anything. And that's sort of what this language of the body is about. So it just takes a different skill set to be able to interpret what is my nervous system, what are my mind and body trying to tell me. For an athlete, it may be, well, you're doing CrossFit 7 days a week and that was working for a little while, but now your brain and nervous system are saying maybe that's not aligned with your values. Maybe that's taken away from time with your family, or maybe you're not sleeping as well and you're not rested. So you need to adjust your physical training in some way. For another person, it may link to something much more psychological, emotional, or existential. So it always depends. But it's very personal. It's deeply personal. And I like to keep that in mind when I'm working with people.
That right there is like the deeply personal piece of it. Is really huge. And I think we could all, myself included, I think you probably do a good job of this, is just helping people conceptualize. I put out a post a long time ago, and it's like we have, pain is, I don't like to say a learned behavior fully, right? Because it's like one of those things I think people almost like, I learned pain, but it is a partially learned experience. You look at, especially maybe the response to symptoms, right? Like even my little boy is learning how we respond to when he gets an ouchie, right? And this isn't good or bad. Like little kids deserve comfort and to be known that they're safe and it's okay. But there's also a certain amount of, how much attention does this get me? How much, and like, I think there's a feed forward mechanism there, right? And again, like you mentioned, it's like I hurt on a regular basis, but my threshold for concern or threat or can I get through this, I'm much better at turning that down than I probably was at a certain point in my life or a certain period. Maybe like PT school. Sorry, I can't talk. PT school kind of makes us all like kind of neurotic. we start hearing hoof prints and we go to zebras when we don't live in Africa. We're in the United States, right? And then I had to kind of untrain some of those things a little bit, right? And again, it's a personal story that I'm like learning to tell for myself in a personal language. But yeah, I think it's also just what you're mentioning is like, this is a longer conversation than traditional marketing around pain and maybe even traditional healthcare has maybe made it. Like it's literally a longer conversation between the person and themselves and you and the person, right? I hope my analogy of like a conversation helps there, but like,
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying?
for sure. And my goal, and maybe your goal too, is to really empower people to have a framework so that they can work with sensations as they come and go in their lives, not to depend on me, but to learn this new language so that when something comes up, they can, instead of just thinking physically, they can also be thinking psychologically about what's going on for them. I want them to be autonomous and have agency to be able to do that for themselves. And that's always the skill that I'm trying to impart to my clients.
When you posted a little bit ago is like unlearning pain, like learning to play the guitar, right? What do you mean by that? Tell people a little bit about like learning and the constructive nature of our brain and that type of stuff.
I really like the idea of learning. Like pain can be learned, and then pain can also be unlearned, because you start with people from an education perspective around the fact that all pain is constructed and experienced in the brain, all sensation is constructed and experienced in the brain, and what's the brain really good at? I want this to be like kind of a good thing. Like the brain's really good at learning, and it's really good at trying to protect us and keep us safe, and it's really good at trying to predict the future, what's going to happen next. And if people can understand that like as an asset rather than a liability, then again it makes this phenomenon that they're experiencing feel a little less scary, a little less dangerous. When I'm playing guitar, right, I'm learning intentionally this new skill. I'm struggling with it, I'm wrestling with it. And gradually over time, miraculously, magically, I get better at it, right? I was using that as a metaphor for the unlearning process, right? Learning sort of happens spontaneously outside of our conscious awareness. We're not choosing it. It's not our fault. We didn't sign up for it. Different from me playing the guitar. And it sort of happens to us just because of how our brains and nervous systems are wired. The unlearning process is similar to learning the guitar because there's struggle and there's challenge and there's failure and there's frustration and there are all these things that people in the middle of the process struggle with. But gradually, incrementally over time, they start to get better at it and it starts to become automatic and they get into a flow state. It becomes a new normal. And for me, this is like the most satisfying, rewarding part of the process, to like cheerlead people in that direction. I just love it.
What? So we touched on this earlier, but like, where was maybe the turning point, or what made you go further down the pain reprocessing theory? What made you, I don't know if you pivoted, I don't even know how you would say it, but why did you lean into this type of work? Alongside, because I know you still do dry needling, I still know you do manual work, and again, that's one of the things I've gotten into a false dichotomy of is like, there's, for me, more of it is just the narrative around it, right? And you've mentioned already, I'm not fixing people. Like, it's really just top down and bottom up type of factors, right? But explain maybe your turning point, or what caused you to keep going down this route, or was there like a critical, sometimes we just look back and it's like I just kept going deeper. But and then how to incorporate top down, with meaning like brain body to body brain type of strategies.
Yeah, good question. I've always been like a novelty seeker. My wife calls me a truth seeker because I'm a Sagittarius. So I'm always looking for like, what am I missing? What's next? Like, why isn't this working? How can I be better? And as good as we get at these sort of bottom-up manual therapy strategies, there are people for whom it doesn't work. And I started to have this feeling in my gut, like something's missing. I'm missing something pretty important here. And I'd read John Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain in my 20s, when I had my own experience with a herniated disc that resolved itself after about 6 months. And I've told this story before. I always sort of wondered, at the time I wondered, where did the disc go? Like, why did I get better? But John Sarno's book was a really helpful part of my recovery process. And so having read that before PT school, I think I always held that like in the back of my mind. And so when people would come in where I could tell there was anxiety or depression and there was some type of psychological overlay, I always felt like that was important, but I didn't really know what to do about it. So when the science started to shift around this, and it coincided with me maybe being a little burned out, fixing bodies, doing the same things, and not getting the results I was hoping for, it just made sense to reach out. And the first person I got connected with was Howard Schiebener. So I came at this from very much a sort of Sarno-esque psychological perspective, more than like a pain science, NOI group, Lorimer Moseley, David Butler perspective. I found that later, and I found them to really synthesize well. But I was ready for that shift to be like, all right, like, do I need to be a psychologist? Like, I can tell this stuff is really important. I didn't realize how important, but I went down that road hard. I was like, I want to learn everything I can, just like I did with dry needling and manipulating joints, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so blending, you obviously a physical guy. Like you live in Colorado, which that's like a good spot to be in, right? You're outdoors. Like, where does, I'm heavily biased towards exercise, and like even I call it training, I think everybody needs to train to get out of pain. No, I really don't. I think training is more about just kind of, if we want to get cliche, it's kind of the Aristotle quote about seeing what you're capable of, right? Yeah, every man should push their body, and I just think it teaches something like there, that hormetic effect of challenging yourself, and then like that allows you to almost go back to a baseline that feels better, right? But where do you stand with, and like also just the psychological moving it helps the brain drastically. Where do you fit in, or what do you encourage when people come to see you? And do you get a lot of people who are already active, or do you get people who are like more just chronic pain, trying to make sense of it, a combination of both? What is your stance, or what are your thoughts on that type of thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a total mix. I mean, I saw a pro cyclist yesterday, and then I might go right into a session with someone who's been basically in a state of freeze, disabled, homebound for 5 years, It runs the whole gamut at this point. And I really like treating both populations, I think it's really, really fascinating. You made a post about like things that fill your cup, that like add stress to your life, things that make your cup bigger, which is like physical training and doing hard things and challenging yourself and building resilience. I think it would be interesting for us to talk about like, what can we do to drain the cup? Like, make the cup bigger, yes, but what can we do to drain the cup? We can get to that. But I really like this idea of, when you understand that pain is a correlate of fear rather than tissue damage, then it's easy to understand why getting in the gym or exercising or being in your body, you're proving to yourself that you're okay. You're proving to your brain that your body is strong and flexible and resilient, and that's so valuable to so many people. It's such an important part of the process, and yet for a subset of people, I see that they can increase their physical capacity by 1,000%. They're doing so much more than they ever were before, and yet they're still dealing with pain. Mm-hmm. And I think that phenomenon is really fascinating, because it shows us that those are sometimes independent variables, that proving to the brain that the body's physically okay wasn't really what the brain needed. It wasn't what the mind and body and nervous system needed. What it needed was relief from the fear or the stress of something else in that person's life.
Yeah.
And so depending on the client, you're going to see that exercise is magic, or it makes them stronger and flexible, but it doesn't really address the root cause.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just touched on some really good stuff right there. It's like, and why I think exercise is not the only avenue. And a lot, like, I work with power lifters, CrossFitters, lifters, and I work with people who want to run, and like the nature of my business is like kind of more virtual coaching. Like, I had a barbell coach before I started my business. I'm like, this is a great idea, and I love it. And then there are virtual components of just interacting with people, but some people just like, they need to accept that their life isn't, and it sounds, it's hard, but like if your life is not what you want it to be, and again, within a certain amount of, like, what's the best way to say this? Like the grass is greenest where we water it. Meaning like, you know, some people, like, their job is really, really taking the life out of them, and they don't have any, and it doesn't mean that they need to quit their job, but they have no avenue for play, right? They have no avenue for novelty. They, again, like, this is tricky and this is complicated, and this is where you start to get into psychological components. John Sarno, I think I read The Divided Mind like 5 or 6 years ago. And it's like, one of them was like, he just didn't like going on vacation. So whenever he would go on vacation, he would get like, or when it was about to go on vacation, like stuff would creep up. And
get worse.
I started to realize, like, basically I used to get really anxious if I knew I was going to be at my in-laws for 5 days. And I would start to have like not, you know, anxiety symptoms and XYZ. And it wasn't because I don't like my in-laws. It was because I knew I was going to be at their house for 5 days or whatever. And I had to like reconcile and sit with those feelings. Right. And, these are the things that we don't do in our modern day society. We don't sit. We don't wait. We're not patient, right? We're not, we constantly, I feel like people, and this is just the narrative and the language of our time, but people are burning themselves out, but they're also not willing to accept that maybe they have to slow down. Maybe they have to look for some more meaning, right? Maybe they have to create some more clarity, in conjunction with checking all the boxes. 'Cause like, I'm a box checker. You're probably a little bit of a box checker, or you want to, like, you know, it feels good to check the boxes, but sometimes you don't need to check the boxes, right?
I'm trying to give myself more permission to do that, not only in my life, but also with my movement practice, like with exercise, because some of the things you hinted at there, and you've worked with enough athletes to know that we can develop a pretty encumbered, unhealthy relationship with exercise. Like, it can be our go-to when we go to visit our family for 5 days and we're stressed. That can be like our only outlet. And if our brain and nervous system start to recognize that we're overusing that outlet, oftentimes it'll start to balk and it'll even take it away. Not because there's anything wrong with exercise and movement, but because we don't have other strategies to be able to deal with our emotions or to manage our stress. And so when I'm working with athletes, as much as I love movement and exercise as a strategy, for a lot of people, it's actually more about changing their relationship with movement and exercise. And for me lately, it's been giving myself permission to not go do that thing, or when I'm out on the bike or when I'm out running, to not have to do it a certain way, go a certain speed, push myself, do intervals, go as far, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because like I lifted over my lunch, quote unquote lunch break, and I did a lifting competition, a weightlifting competition like 2 weeks ago, and my coach basically has been like, dude, you're gonna chill out for a couple weeks. And like, age is still a factor. I don't feel old, but I'm 37 and I have a kid and I have a business, and it's like, dude, the best athletes in the world take breaks, right?
And life is busy. Life is busy for you right now, and so your bandwidth for exercise probably is also affected by all of that.
And you know what I had was like a pretty chill 40 minutes, and if it would have just been me programming for myself, like, you know, some simple stuff. My coach had programmed some simple stuff, and I was gonna add like 6 things to it. I would have been like, let's do some chin-ups and let's do some push-ups and let's do some core.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
And I'm like, you know what, dude? Like, just take it for what it is and move on. And like, I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is like trusting that you don't have to win. Like, and I wrote an article or just wrote a blog about, I really do feel pulled forward by like my vision for the future right now, which I think is part of the power of creating a vision, creating goals. Like, I'm not like, you're a runner, like, you know, have you heard the analogy about runners are either running towards something or away from something, like, and you got to figure out what those things are. But I don't feel like I'm working because of a desire to like be better than anybody else right now, or out of like fear or anything. I'm literally, I think very much I have this energy because I'm pulled forward by my values and what I want out of the future, right? Which is a sweet place to be. But you also have to balance that with like, dude, you're not going to win everything today. Like, have a good day. This is what parenting has taught me. just have a good day, right? Like get the 3 to 5 things done. Make sure your kids has like, you know, what they need. Be kind to your wife because you're gonna lose your patience and XYZ, and then have another one, right? So,
Yeah.
but okay, going back to, you mentioned the cup, right? I think conceptually we can understand pretty simply, oh, my cup's getting filled by the stresses of work and family, and my physical training, and just all these demands. I can build my cup up physically via training, and maybe I can even build up my cup psychologically by learning and interpreting things in different ways. But yeah, how do people empty the cup? That's a great thing. And I think that's one of those things. It's probably going to be a little bit individual everything's going to be individual for people. But what are the things you talk about or think about?
Yeah, we could do like a speed round, probably go back
Yeah.
and forth and talk about
Yeah.
like what are the things that we do to like drain our cups. Like you drill a hole in the bottom. That's like, you know, adding in a little more self-care or adding in a little more like positive self-talk could be one way to start to drain the cup. What's something that you do to take care of yourself or you know, jettison, offload some of the stresses?
I'm a like Buddhist philosophy. I like Buddhist, and I'm also just started to read the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu, and like, you know, some of these things, and you know, presence. Like anytime I can get my brain to be where I am at exactly, right, the better. And one of the things I really love about physical training is that often does that for me, right? The problem is it's easy to like utilize other resources, and it also just takes time and whatnot. Legos have been fun. I got like a few sets of Legos here.
Amazing. That's a great one. I have a lot of clients who, one specifically that was using that as a distraction strategy when his pain was super intense. He, you know, because it's not a good time to do somatic tracking and focus on the symptoms. It's like, what can you do to take care of yourself? And for him, Legos was like the perfect solution. I love that one.
Well, I want to come back to what you just said there, because I think there are well, I'll utilize a little bit of my own story, and you can kind of help me interpret it a little bit too.
Sure.
But I mean, even just like some video games within moderation, it's fun to play some video games. You know, and like some of it too, like the narrative in my brain is like having words or themes. Like, so the word for 2026 for me is trust, right? And so what does that mean? Well, like slowing down, trusting that you can get where you want to go by slowing down, right? Or that's better for you to slow down, right? Also, I think there is a level of trusting that the stress I am imposing upon myself is not just beating me down, right? It's teaching me something, or as long as I like. Have you ever read Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Robert Sapolsky?
Long time ago.
Like, you know, I think I recommend that book to a lot of clinicians, because I think it's a good way to start to, you got to learn about stress and like stress physiology, but it's also kind of bleak, right? I had multiple people be like, Dave, like this is like making me feel like I can't do anything about it. And I'm like, really? Like it made me feel like I could do a lot about it, right? First and foremost is realize that I'm not a zebra who's just ending my stress response. I'm a human that's ruminating on it, that is psychologically imposing stressors upon myself that, you know, don't help me, right?
I mean, think about it. We rely on exercise sometimes to do what zebras are doing. They go and they shake and they move the fear out of them.
Yeah.
We're turning to exercise, which is another fight, flight, sympathetic activity. The zebra doesn't get chased by a lion and say, wow, that was really stressful, I better go exercise some more.
Yeah, that's a great freaking point, right? And like, so, but then just other things, you know, laughter, watching comedy or watching an episode of Seinfeld, like that type of stuff. Yeah. Give me a couple more years.
Like even you and I supporting people in understanding what's filling the cup. Like what are the things that are adding to that cup? Just let's start to become aware of those. And then maybe, you know, let's make a plan to either change your relationship with those or remove some of those things, right? If you have a personality trait like perfectionism or people pleasing that is running through your work day or with your family or whatever, we want to become aware of that, understand where that comes from, like that it was probably serving a really important purpose in the past, but we've never gone back to do an inventory to say, is this still serving me, or is this actually causing a lot of stress? And so once people become aware of that, then they have agency again to be able to make some changes, have conversations with people in their lives to reduce the stuff going in the cup.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Because we don't want to be draining it only to be continually adding at least as much, if not more, into the cup, right?
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. And like, well, this is hopefully a decent segue of like, people are, okay, when the prevailing narrative is that if you have pain, I would say the prevailing narrative is that if you have pain, you've done something wrong, right? If you experience fatigue, you have done something. And like, it's so wild. Like, when I really started, like, it's such a cliche now, and I'm just realizing how many people, but like, one of my buddies, when I was really low, he's a psychiatrist. He's also a palliative care physician. And, you know, I went down all these rabbit holes of, I was depressed on some levels. I felt depressed. I was really low, but then on other levels, I was really anxious. Like,
are you talking about in 2020 when you referenced in your Instagram post when that all sort of happened?
Yeah, okay. Basically. And, you know, I think one of the gifts of that was it was such an acute spiral, right? Like, me and my wife had a really good high quality of life. And then we literally lost our jobs like mid-March, and we went and we got like home health jobs, and it was just, hey, we're doing this. But then I couldn't go to the gym. So one of my outlets was lost, right? And, you know, then I was watching too much news, like, and it's hard because you want to care about the world and you want to care about the people in it, but
it was COVID. There was so much change happening.
Right. And I'm around older folks who are grieving. Like, literally, I'm going into folks' home grieving. I'm 30 years old I have the emotional bandwidth of, you know, I don't know, nothing. Like, it was either anger or happiness, right? But, you know, he's like, you're learning to ride the waves, Dave. Like, you know, the surfer doesn't try to control the waves. He learns to get up on them, right? And it's frustrating and it's hard. And but, you know, I think we've labeled all these very normal physical and mental feelings and things as wrong, right? When, you know, you're learning something when you're fatigued. When you're, you know, when your shoulder hurts, it's either kind of random and you like you said, you like we've created this pattern that's just and it's just not useful, right? Or it is useful, which is the tricky part, because it's telling you like, dude, you're trying to bench more than you're capable of right now. It's okay, like back off a little bit, right? But yeah, it's like, and then it's almost a vicious cycle. What I saw is, like, you know, the fear avoidance model, how it's like you go through the loop. And then if you can basically make sense of it and then find a productive strategy to help you overcome the fear and keep moving forward, you know, you break it. Otherwise, it just becomes almost a vicious cycle, right? But yeah, I think that's just one of the things. I think a lot of what I hope to try to do is just to create a sense of like optimism that people can figure it out, right? And
I think that's why we have such an important role in helping people not only understand symptoms, but as PTs, like ruling out the body as much as we can, taking them out of this story that pain means something's wrong with me, that pain means there's a physical liability or I'm somehow physically vulnerable, because no one else is going to do that for them. And I think we're in a really important place to be able to start with that as a foundation before we then say, pain is information. Emotions are information. They're not the problem. That's the opportunity right there. It's the stories we make up about them that create the...
Yeah, that's huge. Great takeaway. Yeah, and like our role, well, and you kind of said ruling out the body is one of those interesting things that you use that language. I know pain like, and it doesn't necessarily mean completely ruling out the body, right? It just means like ruling out like how grave the situation is, right? Which can be kind of tricky for people. When have you seen, well, give me a few instances that stick out of your mind where like people got it and again, I don't want to make, but like people started to get what you were putting down, right? Maybe they came in, they sought you out for a reason, but like they started to pick up what Charlie was trying to help them see, maybe that, you know, like they'd been either told in other ways that it just, you know, you kind of help them rewrite their own narrative. Does that make sense?
It's like the aha moment. It's like the
Yeah.
click moment that you see in the clinic, and um, yeah, that shows up in all kinds of different ways. Sometimes it shows up during a session, and other time it shows up a week later when they text me and say, "This happened. I did this thing, and it didn't hurt at all. And what's happening? And this is so weird, right?" And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. For some people, it's making, like in the first visit, for instance, people will bring in their whole medical history, and they will have gone through all of this, you know, all of these clinicians trying to figure out what's going on. And it's so confusing and it's so frustrating, and you get a diagnosis and it like makes sense, helps for a little bit, but then the treatment doesn't really work. And in the first session, you start to make some connections about other things that might have been going on in their life during that time. You start to connect it to stress and change and all of the medical trauma or you know, fear that came out of their diagnostic process. And as you do that, as you look at that evidence, you know, you can see it start to click for people. Like, doesn't this make so much more sense if you look at it in this new way versus the way that you were trying to conceptualize it with your PT or your physician before? Doesn't this like, does it just feel right? Doesn't everything just kind of fall into place, you know, when you sort of reconceptualize it? And that's, I think, that's our biggest role. Even if, you know, we're not meant to be psychologists, we're not meant to help people with their trauma recovery, right? There are clinicians that are expert at that, but I feel like it's my job to be able to help them put together the pieces and make the connections so that they can start thinking about their symptoms differently. And then they can decide, what do they want to do with that, right?
You seem really good at this. You seem really good at helping people. Do you still struggle with helping people, you know, see some of these things?
Oh yeah, of course. Every day. Yeah, I have a clinician group that I mentor every Wednesday. It's an amazing group of like 20 clinicians that sort of come in and out. And most of what we talk about is like challenging cases, challenging situations, share strategies and share ideas. And it's really, as a clinician, it's really amazing, especially for someone that I work on my own. Otherwise, I'm a one-man show in my practice. So it's really nice for all of us to have that support. But all of us, it just shows me that all of us are, every person that comes into our office is different. So you have someone that just, they're not even open to the education about modern pain science. Like you can't even get through that like first step, right? And other people get through that step and they're like bought in and they get it, but then they hit a barrier, you know, somewhere else along the way. Maybe they're resistant to talking about changing their relationship with sports and athletics. They're resistant to this idea that maybe something needs to shift for them because they're really attached to it or whatever. Yeah, I mean, this whole process is ripe with resistance because we just get attached to what's familiar. And once something's familiar, it's really difficult to change out of that. It takes energy, it's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar. And so I'm always empathic to the fact that, and I share stories about my own life, things in my own life where I'm like, this is really hard. Like, this is really important change. I know it needs to happen. I understand it, but it's so hard to do.
Yeah. And I mean, like, the brain doesn't change without, like, if it's too easy, the brain doesn't care, it doesn't change. If it's too big and scary, brain's not going to change, right? It's like, all right, how do we find this sweet spot to help the little nudge, right? Same thing even with the body. I mean, like, I've just, as I've gotten a little older, not because I'm older, but because I think I'm wiser, I am okay with just slower and steadier progress, because it's kind of actually how it really, you find, hopefully, again, the sweet spot is always changing around, right? And I think what's funny, I think this is one of the things I've just been ruminating on a lot lately, is like, everybody that I know is like, yeah, there's no magic bullet, right? But we're still like looking for it. Like everybody's still like looking for the thing, the one thing, the magic bullet. And it's like, and maybe that's just like you said, like you're just somebody who's a seeker, right? But it kind of what's changed in my brain about being a seeker, because I'm very much a seeker too, is like, what am I hoping to find, right? And I've kind of just rewritten that as like, I'm seeking because I don't understand and I don't know everything, and I'm
And we
trying
never
to
will.
and I never will, right? And that's okay. Like that's the journey, right? So give me like, what else? What do you do for fun besides like hang around the mountain or be outside? Give us a few of those things. Well, here's my question. I always talk about it as a recipe. I don't know where I got this from, but like my recipe, one of the things that really did help me get out of my funk in 2020 was like thinking back to PT school was amazing for me, right? I was learning. I had a community of friends that we were super close, had a lot of fun. I laughed so much in PT school. We played every intramural sport there was to play. Like I probably should have studied a little bit more, right? But I also met and fell in love with my wife, who is also a PT. We were a classic PT school couple, right?
Amazing, amazing.
And but then I was also like reading and learning, and I'm like, okay, so that's like a recipe that I don't think I'm in right now, right? And some of it is like the nature of COVID, and some of it is accepting that that's not you can't always have that perfect recipe. But if you were gonna use that recipe analogy, like what are the things that help Charlie Merrill feel good? And maybe with the generalities that you do see with a lot of people that kind of come out of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, those are great examples that you just shared, and I think your example, it shows that it's such a moving target.
Yes.
Different phases of life, like that's different when I had young kids than it is now when my
Yeah.
kids are almost out to college. I'm in my 50s now, and um, the way I take care of myself has really changed. The things I need have really changed. I'm less focused on fitness, and sports and movement is like my primary identity. And I'm really interested in kind of what you hinted at, like learning new things and struggling with things and skill acquisition. So I'll like learn the guitar and I'll play the guitar for a little while, and I'll be like, okay, that was really fun. It was really satisfying. Now I need to learn how to sew. Now I want to learn how to make a pair of jeans from scratch, right? Something like that. So as I'm moving into my 50s, there's something happening where rather than getting like locked in to more rigid structures, I'm actually craving more novelty and exploration and experimentation in my life. And that's just what I need now. In 5 years, it could be totally different,
Yeah.
But I feel like it's really important to stay tuned in to myself. And that's why pain is helpful, right? This is how I am able to listen, like, wow, this thing that I was doing for the last 2 years, now I'm starting to hurt. Like, it's starting to not feel great. Like, what's going on? Maybe it's not as novel as it was, and I'm getting kind of bored. What changed about it? And this is back to you talking about your Buddhist sentiment about non-attachment.
Yeah.
This is really difficult for a lot of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm reading a book right now called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying,
Yeah.
which you may have read before.
I haven't, but I know
It
of
just
it. Yeah.
feels like right now this is something that I want to dig into. 5 years ago, I would have been like, no thanks. Like, I don't want to read about dying.
Yeah.
But right now, it's not because I'm worried about dying, but the idea of the book is like the more you understand death and the more you relate to death day to day, the more fully you can live. This mantra, I used to hate this mantra when I was racing bikes because all the fastest people would say it, but slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah.
This is sort of the mantra that sounds like you and I have been trying to live by, which is like I'm going to get there faster if I actually allow myself to slow down. It seems like such a paradox, but it seems to work pretty well for me at this point.
I think, I mean, you mentioned this a lot. I'll encourage people. I don't want to take too much more of Charlie's time. I feel like we keep going, but I think we're at a good place here. But Charlie talks a lot about paradox, and it's one of those things that like a lot of this stuff is paradox. A lot of it, it doesn't make sense until you kind of, even, it may never make complete sense, but until you open your mind up to different ways of being, different ways of acting and conducting yourself. Like one of the things, like, it's so silly, man, but it's like, for life to change, I have to change. If you want something different, you have to change. And what I think we've done, and I knew this, and I didn't know this, but I intellectualized the change, right? Like, I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna, like, yeah, I'm thinking differently, but I wasn't doing differently. And it's when you do differently that, like, oh yeah, like, even in my lifting, like, my first experiences in the weight room were, like, a little bit anxiety inducing. I just didn't feel strong, and that stayed with me, stayed with my narrative, right? And I have gotten a lot stronger over the years, but whenever I would meet that point of resistance where it was like, this is the threshold, this is like, can you do this, that anxiety would really bubble up, and it would either cost me some performance. And it was when I honestly, frankly, just signed up for a powerlifting meet, knowing, like, I'm not going to win, I'm not going to be the strongest person there, but I'm going to do my best. It forced me to push through that in a positive way, right? And I had to do something different, right? And then it took me like 5 more iterations to learn that lesson, and I'm still learning that lesson, right? Sure. But yeah, man, it's just so wild. And I think some of it's just open yourself up to that shit, right? Like, open yourself up to the fact that this stuff is wild, and you can be struck by awe and enjoyment and all that stuff. It's like, it's very freeing energetically when you I
don't think we have enough of that in our lives. Wonder and awe, I think, is something that I've tried to recognize and seek out more, because it's rare, it's amazing, but you have to go find it. I think the point that you're making there, right, that I think is really important, is that we learned that pain was about joints and muscles and fascia, right, and biomechanics and movement patterns. And look how far we've come in this conversation. Like, it's clearly so much more existential than that, or it can be. And I'm always sensitive to the fact that it's very intimidating for people. You and I orient towards that as like, no, this is what I want. It's uncomfortable, it's uncertain, but I'm drawn to it. Not everybody feels that way. Yeah. And so I'm always sensitive to that, because it can get that way really quickly. And I love that about it. But
yeah, I'm kind of with you too. It's like, I want to explore this, right? Like, you know, like, let's see. But yeah, it takes reps and being open to it, right? So
it does.
Charlie, where can people find you?
They can find me. I'm not hard to find. I have a website for my clinical practice. It's mperformance.com. I teach courses for clinicians that are looking to synthesize what they do now, manual therapy movement, with more psychological interventions. Most people and clinicians don't know that in late 2025, the APTA legislated that physical therapists within our scope is to go beyond addressing mental and behavioral health to actually managing and treating it. This is a huge leap forward in scope for our profession, and it's exciting, and it requires a lot of responsibility and a lot of skills and training. And so I have a course that I built with the PRT Center for clinicians looking to synthesize and do this really thoughtfully. I teach some courses for people and athletes. I love working with athletes. I'm on Instagram, and I write on Substack periodically. You can find me there just at my name, Charlie Merrill. Yeah, and I do some other work and other creative endeavors that I enjoy. But yeah, reach out anytime. I'm not hard to find.
Charlie Merrill on Instagram. I'll link that in the show notes. Charlie, thanks so much for your time. Love the conversation.
You too, David. Let's do it again.
All right. I love it. Peace, everybody.